I am an atheist, but I have a Christmas tree in my house. I listen to tons of Christmas music, starting earlier in the year than I care to admit. I love Christmas light displays. I exchange gifts with friends and family. I even host a huge Christmas cookie party at my house every single year. So, no, I am not fighting a war on Christmas. But there are Christians who believe that you shouldn't celebrate Christmas. They accurately point out that this is a holiday rooted in pagan traditions. They cite Bible verses that forbid Christians from following pagan practices. For example, Deuteronomy says that adopting pagan-inspired practices to honor God is unacceptable. The second commandment forbids making graven images, like nativity scenes, they argue. And perhaps the most obvious instruction is Jeremiah, which forbids Christians from following the pagan tradition where pagans, quote, cut a tree out of the forest and a craftsman shapes it with his chisel. They adorn it with silver and gold. They fasten it with hammer and nails so it will not totter. Yes, they point out that the Bible forbids Christmas trees. So it turns out there is a war on Christmas, but it isn't being fought by the people that Fox News want you to hate. In reality, the war on Christmas is being fought by Christians. Now, obviously, there are Christians who find nothing wrong with following these pagan traditions, but that's the point, isn't it? If serious, devoted Christians disagree on whether Christmas traditions are sinful, how can anyone consider the Bible a reliable source of fact? Obviously, this question applies to not just Christmas, but every area where Christians disagree about the will of God, from tiny issues like whether you can get a tattoo or have a drink, to serious matters like the acceptability of divorce, to the biggest issue of all, salvation. If you ask 10 Christians whether faith alone can save you, or if you also need good works, you will probably get 11 answers. So I ask you, if devout followers of the Bible can disagree on everything from Christmas celebrations to salvation itself, what does that say about its authorship? Which is more likely, that this heap of confused, unclear, and contradiction-ridden scribblings written in dead languages where we only have copies of translations of copies, is that what an all-powerful being thought would be the best way to tell everyone what would certainly be the single most important message in the history of the universe? Or is the Bible just a collection of stories originating with illiterate goat herders who didn't know where the sun went at night? In short, if there are so many areas under dispute within Christianity itself, what does that say about the broader concept of biblical truth? If you know, please call us, because the show ho ho starts now. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today is December 15th, 2024. I am your host, the Cross Examiner, and joining me today are two giants of Atheist Experience. We've got Forrest Valkai, of course. Welcome, Forrest. And we have Jim Barrows. Welcome, welcome. From an undisclosed location, it looks like, Jim.
Yeah, no, I'm still in Southern Alabama. So.
Oh, nice, excellent,
yeah, so
excellent.
He says.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what somebody hiding would
from
say.
The authorities to. I was going to say, yeah, exactly. Taking time off from hiding from the authorities to do this show. Very kind of you. I appreciate that.
Wonderful.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to the next administration where I won't have to hide nearly as well because, well, let's face it. Never mind. We're getting political. I'm just going to shut up and go away.
I was about to ask about that. So before we get started, I'll tell everybody the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. So normally we start the show off with our question of the week. So we wanted to give you last week's results. I don't know if you guys saw this, of the share your experience question, when we asked everybody, what's a good comeback for I didn't come from no monkey? So we picked three of our favorites. Can anybody try to read the name of number three? Ook-eek Librarian Born Again, maybe, said, quote, I didn't come from no monkey. I'm an orangutan that has been strategically shaved a number of times. That's ringing a bell. I forget who said strategically shaved orangutan. It sounds like it comes from a movie or something like that.
I appreciate the honesty.
Right.
Yeah.
Theosis 18 said a good comeback for I didn't come from no monkey is, then why are you a monkey's uncle? That's pretty good. Pretty good. Usually you get these questions from a crazy uncle at Thanksgiving or something, right? If evolution is true, if we came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? Forrest, did we in fact come from monkeys?
I do. How we don't have time. Yes,
I know.
but not the way you think. Just keep going.
Number one was Job Fortuna. My response to I didn't come from no monkey is, then why do you keep slinging your shit at me? All right, I hadn't read that one until now. That's an excellent response. I think it's a clear winner. Thank you, Job. All right, so we have a question for next week we'd like everybody to consider, and that is, if the Bible had a post-credit scene, what would it show? Jim, have you thought about that one yet?
I can't. I was actually going to do a display, and then I realized I was going to run into a copyright issue. But if you've ever seen the opening credits to Monty Python's The Holy Grail, I think that's what you would see there, right?
Right.
The whole joke about the producers being canned.
Yes. Yes.
And then hiring camels at the end. Yes, that would be the whole thing. So.
Absolutely. I don't know if you saw that in advance, Forrest. Did you have any idea of a post-credit scene for the Bible?
I'll be honest with you. Somebody probably warned me about it in advance, but I'm terrible at my job and I didn't. So what I can say for right now, that my answer would probably be like that. Just, like I think it was in the first Avengers movie back in like 2012 or whatever that was, the original one, where at the end of the movie it does the big reveal that Thanos is going to come along, you know what I mean?
Right.
Something like that, but with Satan, where it's like just actually he was behind the scenes the whole time, and the thing that happened in Revelations wasn't even actually the dude. That was just the facsimile. That was a thrall of a thrall. It was a robot controlled by a zombie controlled by a different robot, while Satan was back here doing something. That's the big reveal. I love that.
Oh,
I think that's actually a pretty good one.
Would it be Satan or Joseph Smith?
Oh, yes. That would be a twist.
Yes.
That would be a real twist. I was thinking, so I'm old enough, older than I care to admit, to have seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off in the theater. Mm-hmm. The original post-credit scene of the credits roll and Matthew Broderick comes out in a robe and says, "What are you still doing here? The movie's over. Go home." That to me would be appropriate. Would be, somebody in a robe that actually wrote the Bible, because we don't know who they are. Like, what are you still reading this? This is all made up stories. Go home, live your life. Something along those lines. But obviously the best answers always come from our audience. So I'd love to hear what they come up with. Please, if you're listening, put your answer, I should say, in the comment section below, not in the super chats here or anything like that, and give us your best answer. And tune in next week when we reveal our top 3 answers. Again, not in the live chat. So how are you guys doing? What you been up to? Let's start with Forrest. What have you got going on?
I just finished a video that'll be published on my channel probably this week about whale evolution, reacting to a team of apologists that are talking about how whales couldn't have possibly evolved because they would need things like noses. It's a wild ride. And so just finished that thing, putting the final touches on the script for a new Sex and Sensibility video talking about sex and gender and why those are different and neither one is a binary. Trying to put on something else for the end of the year if I can, some sort of other cool, if I can squeeze a third video in December, I really want to. Gearing up for the last semester of this program, man, things are going phenomenally. Busy, but
great
happy.
To hear. Is the whale one going to be on your Reacteria channel or on? Mm-hmm. It is.
Yep.
Okay,
it
great.
It is an episode of Reacteria. It'll be on my main channel. Yep.
Awesome. That is great. How about you, Jim? What have you been up to?
I did a show yesterday where we talked about education and indoctrination. That was a good conversation I had over on Global Atheists. And
wow.
So, yeah. And then we went girlfriend and I went house hunting here in the Southern Alabama area, and we found one that's close to all the diving we want to do. It's closer than where we are now. So The bad audio that I've got will go away because I will stop being near a concrete floor.
Yep, that's the trouble when you're in those temp positions and you want to get online and stream, is you can't control your environment as well. But I can hear you loud and clear, and I'm sure our callers can. So thanks for bringing us up to speed there. That's awesome to hear. What do you guys think? Should we take a call or two? We've got a decent number here.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So I think what I'm going to start with today will be Patrick from Florida. Pronouns are he, him. And the question is, and I want to make sure I understand you, Patrick, is why do atheists continue to seek evidence for God? Do I have your question correct, Patrick?
Somewhat. There's a lead into that I actually wrote. It's just a short little thing I'd like to ask specifically for Forrest as a scientist.
Well, why don't you boil it down for us? We don't want to go on a long speech, but if you can get to the core of what you'd like to talk about, let us know.
I could have already said it. One of the most prolific scientists of our time, Mikhail Kaku of string theory, said that science, which seeks evidence, deals only with things that are considered testable, reproducible, and falsifiable.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's not just him saying that, but yeah, go for it.
So that comes to it. So how do we keep asking for evidence of God?
Well, that's, I think, embedded in there's a hidden premise there in your question that seems to be you're asserting that God is not testable or observable or falsifiable. Am I understanding you correct? Is that the logic you're saying? Because the God hypothesis is not falsifiable, therefore we should stop asking for evidence? Is that what you're asking?
No, not necessarily. Testable, reproducible. So how are you going to reproduce God in a laboratory? How are you going to falsify it?
Okay, I've got an answer. I've got an answer. I'm eager to hear what Forrest and Jim have to say, but I'll give you my best answer of how this works. So on my podcast, I've got a long-running series on faith healing. So the concept is intercessory prayer, right? Where you're asking a God to intercede on somebody's behalf. The Templeton Foundation, which is a Christian organization, sponsored and paid for what was known as the Great Prayer Study. It was a giant study. And the Templeton Foundation, again, Christian organization, but also seeking to do things above board, seeking to find the fingerprints of God through science, ran this experiment, the largest one ever done, where patients were prayed for, all sorts of good controls put on the experiments. Some were prayed for, some weren't. And the study found that not only were the people who were not prayed for no more likely to see better health outcomes than the people who were prayed for, but in at least one study where the patients who knew they were being prayed for fared worse than the patients who were either not prayed for or were prayed for, but i.e. knowing maybe it made you stress you out. So you're not testing for God directly, but you are testing the claims made in the Bible. The claim is anything you want for, pray for it, and you'll get it. And that's repeated throughout time. What would your response be there, Forrest, as a scientist? Any ideas spring to mind?
Yeah, so the thing that I think is really more important and something that people who don't participate in science get wrong a lot is when we say replicable, when you want experimental evidence to be replicable, we are talking about the evidence itself, not necessarily the entire experiment. So say, for example, forensic science, right? If we have a murder and we're trying to use science to solve that murder, that doesn't mean that we have to watch the murder happen over and over in order to have a replicable type of evidence. It means that we can take individual pieces of evidence that are testable, replicable, falsifiable, and whatnot, like, for example, blood spatter patterns, or like the depth and angle of knife wounds causing this or that kind of injury, or fingerprints. Like, these are all things that are replicable and testable and falsifiable and all these different kinds of experimental evidence that all factor into building an inductive model of what happened. All of these things are pointing in this direction, so we can then say that this is the most likely scenario that fits this evidence. And so when we talk about things like evolution or the Big Bang or plate tectonics, or looking back through history, through archaeology, and looking at how this civilization went extinct or anything like that, these are things that obviously we can't run back the clock and watch this thing happen over and over, but we can have testable, replicable, experimental evidence on individual pieces of evidence, and those individual pieces of evidence all point in the same direction, which is where we build our scientific models from. So when you're talking about experimental evidence for a God, no, we don't have to have a replicable God built in a laboratory any more than we have to have a sun built in a laboratory in order to understand how stellar nucleosynthesis works. We just have to be able to test individual pieces, have literally any evidence for this thing that's pointing in this direction. And unfortunately, unlike real science, when it comes to theological stuff, when it comes to gods, when it comes to magic, when it comes to spirits, when it comes to angels, demons, leprechauns, unicorns, whatever, we just don't even have a scrap of evidence that points in any direction, whether it be replicable or falsifiable or not.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'd like to hear back from Patrick, but Jim, what are your thoughts? Anything you'd like to add?
Well, I was going to go with the Templeton Foundation too. And then after what both of you said, I'd just really like to point out that despite everything that Forrest and Graham just said, which is absolutely true, the only thing we're trying to prove a negative, and that's the hardest thing to do. It's not impossible, it's just difficult. And so all we need is one good, sufficient piece of evidence to prove that God exists. And that's why we're looking for that evidence, because the only thing we can do is try to prove a negative. And in the vastness of the universe and everything we don't understand about the universe and science, there might be an answer there. There might be proof of a God that we haven't seen. And that's what we're looking for. So when people come on and they go, look at the trees, or how do you think the earth formed, or any of these other things, we know how all that formed, and no God was necessary for any of it. But that doesn't mean one doesn't exist. We're still looking for that piece of evidence to prove that God exists, because of how difficult it is to prove the negative for a God. Now, when it comes to the omni-God, the problem of evil pretty much disproves the omni-God. So there's got to be some other type of God
right.
that exists, because the problem of evil pretty much logically kills the omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent God.
Okay.
And we've known that since Epictetus, prior to Christianity, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of Christians have heard that and said, okay, well, we won't say omni, we'll say maximal and all that stuff. It's they keep moving that goalpost. But Patrick, what say you to this?
So the Templeton Foundation, I get it. You got a control group and a placebo group there. The ones praying would be the control group, the placebo. Well, no, something like that. Isn't it?
That's right.
Forrest, correct me on this. Okay, so,
strictly speaking, the people not being prayed over would be the control group, but it's whatever.
You guys are referencing the Christian God, I would say, that's one guess.
More importantly, let me clarify. I want to let you speak, but more importantly, and this is the real point, we're referencing a claim made by Christians, a testable claim made by Christians. If the Bible is true, then the hundreds of times it says, pray for something and you will get it, should also be true. So we're not testing a God, we're testing a claim made by Christians. And that's the real answer, is that's what we test. So please do continue. Does that make sense?
Yes, you're focusing on a very narrow scope there. I'd say just focus on a Christian definition of a God. No. I want to make sure you get this, Patrick.
We are testing a single claim made by a large number of followers of what they say is a God. And yes, it's very narrow. Experiments, Forrest, back me up. Your experiments almost by definition have to be narrow, because you want to narrow it down to one question. Can I support this with evidence or not, right? Forrest, are all experiments generally fairly narrow?
It depends. It depends on what you're doing. So, like, there was this really cool paper called by a guy named Platt called "Strong Inference," and it was all about like try to rule out as many hypotheses as you can with the same experiment. So it doesn't have to be super narrow in terms of like what you are testing for. It's just like narrow in terms of the point. But that's also just something that was given to me in my undergrad. There's lots and lots and lots of papers and lots of scientists out there that do exactly that. There's plenty of scientists out there that have 50 papers which are almost word for word the same thing, except this next one is changed a little bit, and now we're going to test it this way, and now we're going to test it this way, and now we're going to test, and then there's other ones that are, you know, kind of comprehensive, and it's like we did 50 different things and only one worked, and here's why. You know what I mean? So it is fair to say that evidence should be specific. Evidence should be pointing in one direction. It doesn't necessarily have to, but like if you're going for making a claim, then you want to be honest about the fact like this evidence could be pointing in two different directions. So like, for example, you know, on the whale video, right? Back in the 90s, there were two major leading hypotheses. We knew that whales evolved from land animals. And so there was one group of people that were saying like, oh, this looks like they're coming from these things called mesonychids, which are these hooved carnivores. They called them wolves with hooves. And then there was the other group over here that was saying, no, they actually look like they come from artiodactyls, which are hooved herbivores, things like deer and sheep and pigs and stuff. And up until the mid 2000s, that we had these two, the evidence pointed in both directions, and we were honest about that. And then we came up with Indohyus. We found Indohyus, which thoroughly solidified, okay, this is the common ancestor of all whales. This is definitely an artiodactyl. Case closed. We now know what these things are. And so like, yeah, your evidence can be somewhat broad, but your overall, like if you have a theory, if you have a big idea that you're trying to claim, you need really, really specific shit pointing towards that, even if that specific shit is a collection of somewhat broad shit, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So Patrick, one point, Jim, real quickly, I just want to make sure that we see if Patrick understands. We are testing a single claim in this particular experience we're talking about. A single claim might be made by a group of people who believe in a single God. But if there are other claims made by other followers of other gods, we can test those too. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's your definition of God, Patrick?
Yeah, there you go.
Because if ours is, if what we've already talked about hasn't covered your definition, then I think we'd like to address your definition.
I would say that, from a human perspective, we would be in the position of an ant to a human, like the ant being the human and the human being the God. An ant can't understand the mind of the human, the art of the human, the love of the human, the depths of what it is of humanity, what it is to be human. So I would say,
so we can't. So are you saying we can't understand anything about this God at all? We can't conceive of it. We can't understand it. That's just a simple question. Is that your argument?
No, sir.
Okay. So can we or can we not understand? Are we ants or are we not ants?
We would. It would be like Einstein indicated that we would only be able to perceive God in a limited way. You know what I'm saying?
That's very convenient for your argument, isn't it, though? Isn't it convenient to say, well, in all the areas where we can test claims, we are but ants, so we don't understand. But when I get into discussions, I have to say that we can understand, because if I say we can't understand at all, then we become just objects to this God. We have no moral compass. We have no culpability to following the God's rules or not. Therefore, any punishment this God might mete out upon us would be unjustifiable. So you know that you have to say that we could understand part of God, but when we start talking about details, you wanted to say that we're ants. So which is it? Can we understand the rules that God gives us, or are we ants and we aren't responsible? We are just nothing more than dust in the wind to him.
I have a follow-up question whenever you answer that, Patrick.
For me, can I say something? Can I say something about this? See,
I prefer you answer Graham's question.
Hey, real quick, I like this about, I'm down with the theory of evolution. It's science fact at this point. But with the whale issue, didn't they force?
Hold on. Wait. We asked you a question. You wanted to have it both ways. We're both ants, but we also can kind of understand, i.e., you want to be able to say we can't understand because that makes it easy for us to ignore and hide under the table any sort of evidence we have that claims in the Bible or whatever God is saying is false. But you also want to say that we can understand, presumably, so this God can hold us morally responsible. I need a definitive answer from you. Can we understand what this God wants us to do or not?
In some part, I would say so, because we've been given this gift called a human brain where we can discern and come up, determine our own morality. We can, I think the gift would be a human brain where we can deduce things on our own through science, philosophy.
Okay. Sure. So the answer is yes. We can understand if this God wants something from us. We can understand that. Forrest, you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, the big thing for me is that, Patrick, you're saying that like we are but ants and we can't understand the mind of God and the purpose of God and the ways of God and all these different things. But that doesn't imply that we can't know that this God exists. Ants certainly don't know what I'm thinking. They certainly don't have the capacity to grasp the kind of things that even a child would think about. But they certainly will know that humans exist. Otherwise, they wouldn't bite us and stuff when we're messing with them. And so, like, they understand that big, crazy apes are real. And so for us, we can understand the scope of the entire universe. We can understand things that are tens of billions of over 10 billion years old. Shouldn't say tens because the universe is 13.8, but it doesn't matter. Like we can understand stuff that is billions of years old. We can understand the scale of galaxies. We can calculate like the shit that is like beyond the scope of human imagination. We can actually break it down and understand it and calculate it and come to terms with it. We don't have to know every little thing about this God. We should at least be able to know that it exists, and we don't. So that, to me, is a reason to not believe in it. If I don't have a reason to believe that a thing exists, then I'm not going to.
And ants could, in this metaphor, ants could understand that it is, in fact, immoral for the human to burn them with a magnifying glass or step on them just for giggles or pour hot aluminum down their nest just to see what their nests look like. Can understand that is not good things to happen, that is, immoral things to happen to them by the God. And so it sounds like you're saying that we could also know things that are immoral. So when we look at the Bible and we go, oh, look, God commanded humans to commit genocide, then we can go, wait a minute, how is an omnipotent being, which is what you're describing in the ant to human metaphor, unable to deal with the Canaanites himself? Why does he have to force humans to do it for him? Because that means he's not, by definition, omnipotent. And so what makes that okay? What makes it impossible for us to understand that is immoral?
We'll keep in mind, Patrick already granted to us that we can understand the mind of God. So, So Patrick, getting back to Jim's earlier point, what do you actually believe that you know about what your God, presumably you believe there is a God, what your God wants out of humans? What does your God want?
How would I know that?
Okay, so if you don't know what God wants and you can't determine that he's exists or not, then why do you care? Your question to us when you called in was, why do atheists continue to seek evidence for God? Yet you are now saying that, well, maybe we can understand what the God wants, but I don't know what he wants and we can't detect him. So isn't this God you're describing something that would be the same as a God that doesn't exist?
Well, for myself, I like the elegance of the pantheism, the God of Einstein and Spinoza, but however, my pantheism is unique unto myself. I conceived of it without any knowledge.
But why should we care about that? Why should we care about your conception of some God that makes you happy if you can't show that it's actually real?
the universe is very real.
Okay. All right. So,
nobody said it wasn't.
Forrest and Jim, I think we might be approaching God is the universe argument. Do either of you find that interesting in any way?
No. So I would ask you, Patrick, like, how do you tell the difference between a God that you cannot detect and cannot know and a God that doesn't exist?
I say we can dimly perceive the universe. We don't. All this.
Nobody said we didn't, and that isn't what I asked you.
All this.
Yeah, Patrick, you're trying to have it both ways here. You keep saying we can dimly perceive, and maybe we can. Give me your single best piece of evidence that establishes that the God that you believe in is actually real and is supernatural. Let me clarify.
I would like to. Can I actually get a word in? You all each three.
No, not really, because we've heard a lot of these calls before, and we've been on the phone with you for 20 minutes now, and you're vacillating back and forth between you can't know and sort of woo claims about, Spinoza's God is the universe sort of thing. Quite frankly, I don't know. I can't speak for Jim and Forrest. I don't care about any God claims where the end result is, meh, do what you want, or it's the universe. There is no desire on the part of this God, right? Because those gods don't start creating people who want to take over my government and take away healthcare rights from women and all of those sorts of things. I care about where the rubber hits the road. And if you believe in a God that you can't even really know exists or care to know what it wants, then it's utterly boring to me. What about you, Jim? Do you find any of this? Is there a line you want to go down here?
Well, I find Spinoza's God, the concept of Spinoza's God, to be kind of a cop-out, right? Because there's no difference between Spinoza's God and what we understand the universe to be in science. And therefore, there is no God. We're just redefining the word God to mean universe or the body of knowledge we call science. And that's a cop-out. And so if you want to go that route and just cop out that way, that's fine. But you don't have any evidence for the God that you believe in. And so we don't have any reason to believe in the God that you do. And that's what we're looking for, is evidence for a God, not evidence that science exists and we're just going to call it God. That's a useless word game to me.
All right. So I agree with you, Patrick. I do want to give you your fair shot. What is your single best piece of evidence that there is a supernatural God that we should care about?
Can I get 2 minutes to speak without getting interrupted?
No, I don't want whining and complaining. I just, somebody who knows their shit, for pardon my English, can give me the elevator pitch. They can walk up and say, X is true and it's testable, right? It doesn't take 2 minutes. If you need 2 minutes of explaining to give me a claim that is testable, that other people can go out and test and determine that what you're claiming is true, then you probably need to go back and refine that. Can you give me the elevator pitch? Can you give me the statement, the claim that we can go test to prove that something along the lines of there is this omnipotent God or a supernatural God that wants me to do X is true? Can you just name it?
So you want a very simple thing. I mean, you want to simplify God. It's like atheists want to simplify God into like the same God like a Christian God is just going to pop out of the sky, and announce himself on all radio.
Let me model the answer for you. Let me model the answer for you, Patrick. If I were a Christian and I was asked this question, I would say something like, the claims in the Bible are true. Or I have seen miracles. This is what I'm talking about. People who understand what they're talking about can summarize. I'm not going to say you're going to settle them answer, but this is where you start the conversation. So that's all I'm saying, right? I'm not saying you can explain the universe in 30 seconds, but if you need 2 minutes to tell me I've seen miracles or I had a dream, then you're confused. So what's the summary? Give me the top level. What is the piece of evidence that you think is the most convincing?
What I say is one piece of evidence to define God. Are you serious?
I didn't say that.
So,
I said, what piece of evidence do you find most convincing?
Yeah, maybe we can compromise.
Sure, go ahead, Forrest.
I understand. It's probably frustrating. It's you talking to three different people, and the issue is that we do this shit for a living, right? We listen to people talk about their gods and their beliefs all the time, and so something that might be to you pretty insightful and what you think is a really big idea is something that I almost guarantee you we've heard 30 times. And so what I want you to try here, going back to the same thing, if I'm talking about evolution, right? There's no freaking way that I can give you the best possible case for everything I know about evolution in a minute. But I can give you like a good summary of like, this is what it is that I'm actually talking about. And this is a reason, a solid reason why I can say that that's real. And so that's all we're at. We're not asking you to summarize your God down into anything. We're not asking you to give us everything you got in a tiny bit of time. We're not trying to box you in to make it that you have to straw man yourself so we have an easier position. None of that. We don't want to have you give us a sermon for 2 minutes and explain everything you think you know about this stuff, and then have us have to then cut you off 1,000 times and interrupt you on every little thing that's a problem, and then nobody gets anywhere. So can we maybe make a compromise? If the other hosts agree, can we do like a 1 minute clock? And
sure,
we won't talk. We won't say a word for 1 full minute, 60 seconds. Tell us what the God is that you believe in and why you believe that God is supernatural and real and all these things. And I swear to glob, dude, if you just try to tell me that it's the universe and that this God is everywhere in the universe, then I will actually be cross with you and be very bored, because that is exactly what we're accusing you of doing. I'm hoping you don't do that thing.
Absolutely. So if we could get, I believe we can still put that clock up on the screen if we have it, but I'll turn it over to Patrick. Patrick, you have 60 seconds. What is the single best, not the only or all, but what is the single best piece of evidence that convinces you the most that there is a God?
Okay, you all have monopolized this for at least 80% of the call, but I'll just take that as part of my first 10 seconds. But, you know, he has a problem. Jim has a problem with the universe being called God. The universe already has a name, as if the universe were God, you know, because humans define the universe as the universe, then the universe couldn't be God. That's hilarious. Okay, and beyond that, Forrest is assuming he knows more about evolution than me, but I probably know just equally as much. And then, I mean, but the universe as God would be, you know, that would take volumes to describe, you know, not 60 seconds. It's not, y'all want to oversimplify God, but the universe as God, you'd have to go through philosophy, science, maybe some esoteric.
And that's your time, Patrick. Here's the thing, dude. Like, this is what sucks so bad. We gave you a full minute of us not speaking. You spent the entire time bitching. Like, you spent the first 10 seconds complaining that you had 3 people talking over you, when that is our job, to correct issues that you say. And then you spent the other 50 seconds saying, you believe this and this and this, and that guy believes this and this and this, and I know this. And you, for 60 whole fucking seconds, you never actually explain what God you're even talking about. You just complained about us. If
Patrick,
we ask you what you believe and your statement starts with, you guys think, you're not doing anybody any fucking good.
But
Least
it's
of all
worse.
yourself.
It's worse, Forrest. It's worse. He actually thinks that he knows as much about evolution as you do.
Maybe he does. Maybe he does, but I never claimed that I know more than him. I just use it as an example. Like, and it sounds like this dude's got an issue with people just speaking articulately about whatever thing that they think they're trying to pull something over on him. I just related it to back something that I'm comfortable with. I wouldn't have related it back to like computer science or something that I don't know shit about.
Yeah, like, okay, Francis Collins, right? Head of the Human Genome Project, amazing scientist.
Are you saying you know more about Francis Collins than me?
Also a devout Christian, right? If I ask Francis Collins, what is the single best piece of evidence that convinces you evolution is true? He would look me in the face and say, the genetic record. Boom. Like, and that is the starting point of any sort of conversation. That's what we're asking you for, Patrick, is what is the single best piece of evidence? And literally it was nothing but whining, complaining, and bitching. You even admitted it. My first 10 seconds are just going to be complaining about something. So I think we're going to move on.
I think that's a good idea.
I appreciate the call, Patrick, but my personal interpretation, guys, is there's a lot of people who want mystery. They want navel gazing, that they want their God to be something that you have to discover, and it's a personal truth and all of that. So there's sort of this woo God, but that kind of bores me at some point, because, you know, we've got people out here trying to take over our government who are going to turn it into a theocracy because they literally believe there is a God, they know it's mind, and that God wants them to do X, right? And that's what matters. If there's just some God that you think that this glass is God, great. What does the glass want me to do? Nothing. I don't care. Boring. How about you guys?
Yeah, I'm really glad that we gave him that full minute, because I could tell already that the argument was going to be, you guys wouldn't even let me speak. You wouldn't let me present the God. Every time I tried to talk about God, you just did the atheist thing, and you asked me to define every single term, and you wouldn't let me even get anything out. And here you had the chance, bro. And you spent the entire time complaining about what you think we think about things that we didn't even talk about half the time. And like, just, man, that's so fucking lazy. And I just hope that Patrick tries a little bit harder next time he calls in, because he almost certainly will.
Yeah,
I would like to actually hear what he thinks.
I was going to tell Patrick, don't ever go on Shark Tank, because when you're asked for your 60-second pitch and you do that, you're not getting any investors.
You know more about business and evolution than me. You sons of bitches. You know you don't get to hear about my new sponge. Fuck you.
Right. Oh, my goodness. Well, before we move on, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. We do have a few announcements to take. We've got a lot of callers, so I'll try to get through them quickly. First, as many of you know, we have initiated phase 2 of our brick fundraiser. We want to highlight some of the standout orders we've received. This week's featured brick goes out to Charles from Texas, and it says on his brick, "God is not great," by Christopher Hitchens. That is, I think the subtitle is one of my favorites, "How Religion Poisons Everything," which is may have poisoned Patrick's mind there into wanting to believe. So thank you very much, Charles from Texas, for your purchase. Make sure that you guys get yours and help the ACA by buying a brick at tiny.cc/ACA bricks. Have you guys purchased a brick yet?
No, I'm a bad person.
All right.
I'm a bad friend.
Go buy one.
I thought about it.
I bought one, but that was in the first phase. I don't know if that still counts.
I will buy a brick when like we reach like I want to know what phase, where the bricks are going in each phase. You know what I mean? Because you got the patio phase. I don't know where this phase is being placed. I want to know where the brick is going to end up, so I know how stupid I can make the brick and how prominently that stupid thing will be displayed at the ACA forever. You understand? That's what I'm concerned about. Absolutely.
Maybe that's an idea for the producers. Pay extra, and you get to decide where your brick goes, right?
Also, is it only it is only text, or can you put images on the brick?
I think they have stock icons. I don't know if you can use your own.
Can you mess with a stock icon? Can I put a penis on a brick is what I'm asking you. I don't know why I'm dancing around that.
You mean the image of a penis or
any penis? Okay, there's a lot of different styles.
No, I meant the image of a penis versus an actual penis. Yes, you can, but you might get arrested.
Well, I want one that's going to stay there for a long time, permanent. You know what I mean? And there's implications to whether or not I do that.
Yeah. I would probably say
just
no.
Move to Austin.
Oh my goodness. All right, let's move on from this. We are devolving as we speak. The conversation is, I should say. Another way to support us is by sending super chats. We're going to read as many as we can, and we actually have a few to read right now. So we're going to jump into those. We have Rainbow Wolf, a longtime contributor. Thank you, Rainbow Wolf, for your $4.99 contribution. They said, if you believe in torturing kids into unaliving and then saying, quote, some kids are meant to suffer and die, you're as depraved as it gets. Period. I couldn't agree with you more, Rainbow Wolf. One of my favorite facts to cite to religious people who love to talk about how good their God is 10,000 children starve to death on earth every single day.
Yep.
It's unavoidable. It is. It is. What do you guys think? Is there any world, any God, I guess you could think of, that's a good God that would mesh well with what we see in this world? The pain, the suffering,
no.
the just random
one
tsunami deaths.
Yeah, one that is asleep.
Ah, good point. Yeah.
Or is actually torturing us, because just like some people like to torture ants.
Right. Good point.
Yeah.
All right, Anna gave us $5. Can't stick around tonight, but will watch during my overnight shift later. Best wishes, y'all. All right, Anna, you're in your overnight shift. Stay awake. Pay attention here. I know those can get tiring. So thank you for your money.
Don't let Graham tell you what to do. Don't. You do what you feel. You live.
For $5 more, we'll let Forrest tell you what to do. And then
you don't want that.
You'll end up doing his homework is what you'll do.
I think you would want that, just given Forrest's sense of humor.
That's right. Daniel Shower, member for 1 year, gave us $4.99. Loving Forrest's science communication on this episode. Yay, Forrest.
Hey, hello. I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
we said that they absolutely detest. No, wait, that was somebody else. Loving Forrest's science communication on this episode.
Well, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. I'm sorry, I was reading the other chat because somebody just got banned, and I wanted to see why. Nice.
Joshua, $10. Thank you. Book recommendations? ? Any. My book recommendation, if I had to just give somebody one book to read, would be, I don't know if you count it as one book, but Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. More I live in this world, the more I realize Douglas Adams is properly predicting the world we're living in today. How about you guys? Jim, do you have a book recommendation for a donor?
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
There you go.
Or Godel Escherbach, the Eternal Golden Bread. Either of those would be really, really good.
Excellent. Forrest, do you have one? And caveat, it can't be a textbook.
No, it's H.P. Lovecraft.
Okay.
This, I sent these out to my book club buddies on my Patreon this last in October. This tome of Lovecraftian stuff. I freaking love Dagon. It is probably it's one of his shortest ones, and it is one of my favorite ones because it is such a summary in just the briefest possible story, a summary of what makes him so amazing. Lovecraft is one of those people that is just, he was a major inspiration to me, major influence on so many of the things that I do that I love to sneak horror elements into, just to put things, every characters that I make, just stuff. And also a great lesson in how you can, this dude is a fucking racist monster. Good writer, and so there's something to take out of that. I love the fact that his art has transcended his own ignorance. You know what I mean? That's yes. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you did, he definitely has this undertones of the other as a horror device, but also the other as in racism and all of that stuff. But what I love is that people can adapt that and do what they want. Like Jordan Peele in his, I don't know if you saw the series of, I think it was called Lovecraft County or something like that on Netflix, where they took that from a civil rights era Black storytelling experience, and the other became the racist people in their town that were trying to scare them out. It was really good blend. So yeah, he's a fascinating person and royalty free, so you can make lots of games out of his stuff.
Yeah, dude.
All right, good book recommendations. Miranda Rensberger finishes us up here, a longtime contributor. Thank you, Miranda. Gave us $10. She's been a member for 6 months. Patrick thinks we want lab experiments to prove God. No, we want field observations. That's a pretty good way of pointing it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If I'm the ant, I need to at least run into a big toe and to know that there's some sort of thing there. I may not know it's God, but I can at least see there's a wall that I've just run up against, and I can start investigating that. So excellent. So thanks for those super chats. Should we take another call here? We've got a ton. All right. We're going to try to get through as many as we can. I'm going to go next we've got several. I think we will do one very, very quickly on a dare. because people in the chat have already started talking that this is most likely the case. Yes, if you were worried that Jackie is in the queue, he is. Jackie, I'm going to give you 60 seconds to explain what you believe about God. I know it says you're calling in for The Case for Idealism from George Berkeley, but I know you, Jackie. I know our listeners are tired of hearing it because you always cite other people. And then when we ask you questions, you have no idea what they're actually talking about. Tell me, 60 seconds, what's your single biggest piece of evidence that supports the existence of a supernatural God? Go.
So basically, the argument from idealism that I'm going to present, which I derived from George Berkeley's idea, is that because...
Okay, we're dropping him. All right, on to the next caller.
Immediately over.
Yep, thank you. Next up is Brandon from Texas. I think there is a valid scientific reason to believe in a higher power. Do I have you correct, Brandon?
Yes. How you guys doing today?
We're doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you guys for taking my call.
Great. So thank you. What is, you mentioned a valid scientific reason to believe in a higher power. I'm an attorney. I like to define terms, but I'm also very curious, but if I interrupt you to define a few things, please forgive me. But I do want you to explain, A, what is a higher power? And then B, tell me what is the valid scientific reason to believe in that higher power. So could you please define higher power kind of specifically for us, and then tell us your reason for believing.
Absolutely. So first off, the higher power, I would like to define it as the term first mover. I'm pretty sure you guys are probably familiar with Thomas Aquinas. So in his, I guess, apology for explaining God, one of those, and forgive me, I can't really give the specific name. He mentions that there should be a first cause. I'm sure you guys probably heard the argument. So if everything is in constant motion as defined, in the laws of, defined by physics, unless something's applied motion or some type of acceleration, it's just going to move in a constant velocity unless some type of force is applied to it. So there must be some form of first mover or first cause. So, I use the term higher being to be respectful for atheists because I think people should be able to engage with people they disagree with. So I don't want to use the term God. I want to use something that might be a little more neutral ground. So for me, saying higher power is just saying like, okay, there is something out there in the cosmos or whatever that was a first mover in that sense of being that higher power. So that's one. Secondly, and I'm just staying in the realm of science. I only have a bachelor's degree. I'm probably not smarter than you three gentlemen. But basically for me, when I look at things like thermodynamics, which I studied back in college, one thing that surprised me when I was in thermodynamics was that energy is not created nor destroyed. So when you're measuring temperature changes in a closed system or whatever the case may be, all you're measuring is the change in form. So, you might have like a pot of water. If you apply heat on a gas stove, it's turning into steam. So that energy is being transferred. It's not being added to or subtracted to. It's just changing in form.
Sure.
So when I think of energy, I think of energy as something where it's a good argument for God because you can't really measure energy in and of itself like you can measure air particles or water. Energy is just that concept we know is, and we can measure the transfer of, but not necessarily have that chemical definition for. You guys can correct me if you want to, but that.
I think Forrest will probably be a real good person to start us off on this. But I did want to point out one particular issue, which is the first. I don't know how other people take this, but the first mover is a bit of a special pleading fallacy. The argument goes everything has a cause, every action has a cause, except this thing I'm going to call God, the first cause. So it's a bit of a special pleading to say everything has a cause except for the first cause. And I can't tell you why there is a first cause. So that's the first one. But I wanted to move over to Forrest real quickly about entropy. Forrest, do you think that the universe post the Big Bang is a closed system?
I don't know.
That's a great answer. Neither do I.
The thing is, so for two reasons. Number one is because I'm not a physicist, but also because from my conversations with physicists in this area, like the Big Bang, as far as we're pretty damn sure, is the beginning of all space and time. That is, we had the singularity, and from there, that's why I hate the word Big Bang, because it's actually just the everywhere stretch. You know what I mean? Right. Everything starts expanding from that point. However, there is reason to believe, to say that, like, there's an alternative hypothesis that maybe actually the Big Bang is one event in an otherwise eternal universe, that it could be either an oscillating system or there was something beyond that from before that, whatever. What I can say for sure, though, what we do know is that, like, the Big Bang is the point where, like, the math breaks. We don't have a point there where we can say that we know of anything existing beyond that, because to ask what happened before the Big Bang is to ask what happened before our understanding of space and time became a thing. And so you're asking what happened outside of everywhere in a time that wasn't. And if the concept of before didn't exist because there was nothing that happened before anything, because there was no progression of time. And you're saying that in this place where time can't, there was something that happened before the universe. And I don't know what that means. And also, where is that? And also, I know, Brandon, you were specifically saying that you're not talking about a specific God, but when we take God claims, then you're also adding on the baggage of it's a guy, and I know this guy, and I know what the guy wants. And like, that's a whole other thing. The biggest issue for me is that and Graham, you just touched on this, is that you fall into this special pleading trap of saying there has to be something that is starting everything that doesn't need to be started. And if you could find the prime mover of this universe, it's logical to then say, okay, well, what caused that guy? And what caused that thing? And what caused that and that and that and that? And eventually you get into this logic trap that you're presenting to us, Brandon, that eventually, somewhere, at some point, there must be something which can't be moved, which can't be changed, which that is causing all of this stuff. And I get where you're coming from logically in that. Like, it sounds very pretty. There's a reason why it's a popular claim. The issue is you don't have any issue or any evidence for any of that, besides just kind of trying to deal with the physics of our universe to decide what happened before our universe was around. And I don't know what that looks like or what that means. And because I'm not trying to be dishonest with you here, because I can't even grapple with what that could possibly be or how to test it, I'm not going to make any claims or assumptions in any way. And I don't understand why somebody who is a theist would be comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
I hate how big my face is on the screen.
Let's hear from Jim before we go back from Brandon. I'd love to hear them on that, but I know Jim has some comments here.
Yeah. So my problem with everything that begins has a cause is that when you quantumly entangle two particles, they always end up with opposite spin. And last year or the year before, a Nobel Prize was given for proving that there is no cause for that. So when you talk about scientific reason to believe in a first mover or a first cause, I think that kind of shoots you in the foot right there, and shoots you at the, badly in the foot on that one, because there is no cause for this opposite spin. And that's exactly what the paper they wrote concludes, is that there's no cause for this. It's a thing that happens. Quantumly entangling these two particles doesn't cause opposite spin, but they always have it. And so there's no cause. So that's a scientific reason to look at and go, yeah, any argument that is based on everything has a cause gets hung up on this one area, at least this one area in quantum physics that says this doesn't have a cause.
So yeah, let's go back to Brandon. So the summary here is there's a bit of a special pleading going on. First of all, that to say everything must have a prior mover, to say that except for the first one, which I can't really prove exists, that's a bit of a special pleading. Also, the observations we have about how this all works all of everything that happens has a cause. That all happens within the local presentation of our current universe, right? We don't know if that rule applied outside of whatever we call inside, right? That prior to the singularity, if that means anything, like Forrest said, it's like asking what is north of the North Pole. It's a nonsensical question, but the rules that we're looking at here in your statement might only apply after that singularity, right? Because that's the only time after exists. Without time, you don't have a cause because you don't have a before. So I know it's a lot of information, Brandon. What's your take? What's your reaction? Have we made any mistakes here?
No, I would just like to say, and I guess you guys could chime in. Do you believe in your own personal opinion, or I guess in some scientific form, is there some form of beginning? Because that's where I come to my theism is, okay, if everything is just in this constant motion and there's no particular beginning, then I would assume even in this universe or in any other universe, that would be some form of fallacy because there has to be a beginning point. It's not to assert something, and I don't want to come off like I'm just asserting or, I'm trying to plead a bargain. But if we're thinking about things like mathematically, everything has a starting point. Now, of course, you have negative infinity and infinity. Now, as a theist, I would say that's God. Now, in our realm or our universe, we all have from birth and whatever. Yeah, go
Sorry, I want to go back to that statement you said that you would call infinity God. Infinity is a math concept. How do you get from a math concept to a God? Because infinity is not even a number, right? It's a concept.
Well, what I mean is that if you ever hear and I'm sure you all have heard it before, if you ever heard, a Christian like, oh, God is all good, all powerful, I'm in this, and that's all I mean. So if I'm saying infinity, I'm basically saying God in and of himself is where all things come from. He is infinitely good or whatever. So that's what I mean by that. I'm not saying that a mathematical equation. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. No, absolutely. I think let's take the first thing you said in your reply here, which is I think I'm going to summarize here. It's illogical to believe that for want of a better word, that there was no beginning. Am I understanding you correctly? I'm not saying that's my position. I'm just trying to understand. Is that what you're saying? You can't, basically you're arguing it doesn't make sense to say there was no beginning to everything. Is that correct?
I would say and this would be my ultimate thesis, it is rational to believe that there has to be some form of first cause. It wouldn't be necessarily irrational. Not necessarily you have to agree with me, but I don't think it would be irrational.
Okay, but that's your position is that that logic and reason leads to one conclusion, and that is there was a beginning, whatever that means. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah,
I'm not trying to trap anything. I just want to make sure I understand you.
Yeah, no. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So what can we do to answer that question? I've watched a lot of videos about what is time, right? The concept fascinates me, right? The direction of entropy basically is what time is, if I understand it correctly, to run it down. But my rudimentary understanding of time is that it is a property of my current universe, and that time doesn't have a meaning if I go far enough back to a point where there was a singularity, that time, the concept of time may not even exist. And if time doesn't exist, then there can't be a beginning, right? There can't be a beginning because there is no time. Put it another way, a lot of Christians like to say, God is eternal, right? God has always been. There was no beginning. So using those two, I'm going to call into question your premise that there had to have been a beginning. It is entirely possible. There's no such thing as a beginning, at least not the way that we understand it. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I would like to say those are two different contexts. So, for example, we had Genesis 1:1 in the beginning. That's not referring to the beginning like, yes, in the beginning, here comes God. No, God was before that. Any Orthodox theist would say, not just Christian, would say that, okay, God is before Genesis 1:1, but in this particular context, in the beginning is in terms of our universe. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like there's this beginning for our universe.
That's let's stop there. So you're saying God. I don't think you answered my question with all due respect. My question was, did God have a beginning?
Sorry. Did he have a beginning? No.
Okay, so there we go. You don't need a beginning.
Right. So there's functionally no difference, Brandon, between you saying this God doesn't have a beginning and us saying the universe is somehow eternal. There was something about the universe that doesn't require a start. So there's no difference. It's both claims that we can't actually verify with the evidence that we have at hand. It doesn't mean anything. You're just adding this extra stuff to it. Sounds like Jim has just exploded, and we maybe need to...
That's what happens when you live in an undisclosed location in a bunker. So,
yeah.
So do you understand why we're confused, Brandon? That when you create a set of rules that applies to things, and you say, "Well, God doesn't need a beginning," then logically that means it is also possible that something else might need a beginning. And if we don't have any evidence that establishes there is a God, we don't have any evidence for the thing that didn't have a beginning, whatever that might be. They're sort of equal things, and how can we tell which is which? So do you understand why we're confused by you saying, well, everything needs a beginning, asterisk, except God? That sounds like special pleading, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, again, I understand your perspective, but I guess I would just say that's where my first premise was, where I believe there is a first mover. There is that starting point. Now, of course,
that's just restating what you're talking about. It's hard. Sorry to interrupt. Like I don't want to go down a road where we've been before. You're just restating what you just said. The first mover means, the first thing. But there's a bit of a contradiction there. If there is a first mover, then where did that first mover thing come from? Was it moved? If not, then there was no first mover, because the thing that moved first was actually already there and nothing caused it. So I hope you can see why we're confused here. I think that this has been going on for, thousands of years. I don't know, Forrest, if you've ever come up with any experimental evidence to settle the question.
The thing that's frustrating to me, Brandon, is that if I grant your premise and say, okay, there must be this thing that caused the universe, why can't we say it's a natural process? You know what I mean? Like this planet wasn't here and then gravity happened. I don't have to say that there was something that was squeezing the planet together, some intelligent agent or anything like that. It could be a natural process under a different law of physics or in a different universe, or maybe we're in a simulation, or maybe this is a video game, or maybe we're all brains in a vat, and maybe all of these other unfalsifiable things that logically you could kind of work yourself into, but it means all the same nothing is saying that there's some prime mover. There's no actual way to back that up. You're just saying something that, like I said earlier, it sounds very pretty. There is a reason why this is a popular apologetics point, but there's nothing that it actually gives you that's substantial. There's no gainful knowledge from that point. It just says, I have a vague idea about what might have started the universe. And there's nothing to that. You haven't told me why it exists. You haven't told me what it is. You haven't told me why it's an intelligent agent and not a natural process. You haven't told me what made that thing, or why, if there was nothing that made that thing gets a special pass from the same laws of physics that you're claiming exist all the other times. You're not saying why the universe can't do the same thing you're saying this thing can do. You just decided on something. And I don't understand why you're comfortable doing that.
No,
what are your thoughts, Brandon?
I'm not deciding on anything. And forgive me, Forrest. Yeah, no, and forgive me, Forrest. I'm not trying to, sound contradictory or, throw a monkey wrench in or anything. I just wanted to come in and give my 2 cents. I know for a fact if I wanted to, I could take time and, do more of a, scholarly consensus and write a paper and do more in-depth study. But in my own personal experience and just talking to other people, again, my 2 premises, the first mover clause, and then the thermodynamics example where I gave you, where energy itself in thermodynamics is defined as not being created nor destroyed. And I said earlier...
Did you understand when I asked Forrest if this local presentation of our universe since the Big Bang is a closed system? That's why I asked that question, is to address your thermodynamics point, right? Is that that is a property of this universe. All you're doing is describing the physics, the rules that we see operate in this universe. But that doesn't tell me that there's a God. It just says, okay, there's stuff and it can take different forms, but it can neither be created nor destroyed. If anything, to me, that sort of seems like arguing against a God, because it means mathematically it seems like it's impossible, and we don't have any reliable, reproducible way to create a miracle, i.e. prayer is not working. When I ask for God to, instantiate a cup of coffee in front of me, it never happens, right? And even if it did, maybe he was taking the matter from a different part in the universe, but that's a different issue. But it doesn't get you anywhere towards God. It's like saying, you know what? Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. That's, therefore God. You're just describing how things work. Are you saying that because that's so incredible, there must be a God? I don't see the connection there with the thermodynamics.
Well, what I'm saying is like, so, if I'm analyzing water or air, it's something physical that I can see, or it's something that's tangible. I can, do stuff with it. And I'm not saying that energy is not tangible in the sense of its forms. I'm saying that energy is a hard concept for, people that are even in college or whatever to understand, because it's only something you can see in the transfer. And so to me, and again, it's different for you guys. You guys could go to hell with what you think. I'm just saying, for my own opinion, it seems like that's plausible to me to say, okay, well, if there's this thing, energy, and this energy can't be created nor destroyed, that's fascinating, because that's something that, is much more unique than anything else in this universe. And
is it?
That leads me personally to see.
Is it more unique?
Can I ask a question just really quick?
Yeah, absolutely. All I hear Brandon doing is describing the thermodynamics, but not explaining why that means there's a God. Go ahead, Forrest.
Well, Brandon, what's confusing to me is that you keep saying energy can't be created or destroyed, and you keep saying this is the first law of thermodynamics: energy can't be created or destroyed, and you're saying that like, because of this statement, therefore there must have been something that created energy, this God. And I don't like that. How are you getting, if energy can't be created or destroyed, and we all agree on that, then God didn't create energy. It was always here. And there is no need for a prime mover argument. The energy is eternal. The universe is eternal. And we're good. Why are you saying this is a fundamental law of physics, therefore it must have been violated at some time?
Well, I would say that in terms of creation or destroying, that would apply in our universe. But, in my understanding, or, most theists' understanding, God would be outside of the universe, and those laws don't necessarily apply to him.
Right.
He said right down. And so when you look at,
And so my question then, Brandon, goes back to the very first thing that I said about this topic like 20 fucking minutes ago is, okay, you're talking about something outside of this universe, a different law of physics. How do you know about those things? How do you know what happened outside of everywhere in a place where time like ours didn't exist? There was no before, there was no space, nothing that we understand in our universe was. How do you know what was going on there and how it happened and why it must have happened that way? How does your logic and your understanding of thermodynamics in our universe help you understand a different law of physics in a different kind of universe? What does that mean?
Well, what I'm saying is that all that stuff that you just explained that we've been going through, it just leads to the fact that it's not irrational to believe that there is, or there could be.
By definition.
That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, hold on.
That is the definition of irrationality. Yes. To say, I know about it. What you're telling us, Brandon, I'm sorry, this is not a straw man. This is what you're actually fucking saying here, is that I understand the laws of physics of this universe. Therefore, there must also be a different law of physics, which is beyond human comprehension. And I comprehend it so well that I can tell you about what that entails for our universe. And that's not irrational. That is very irrational. That is extremely irrational. That is the definition of irrational. Like you're putting numbers on top of each other that don't belong there. You're making irreducible and unsimplifiable fractions. It is irrational. Like, that doesn't make any sense. You're giving me the square root of 2 here, dude.
Yeah, Jim, what is your definition? I don't want to put you on the spot, but what is your definition of rational?
Well,
I just gave
it's
several.
basically justifying your knowledge. It's knowledge, right? Justified true belief. It's not rational to believe things, to have knowledge, to claim knowledge that you can't justify. And I've heard no justification for the leap from the first law of thermodynamics to God.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're hearing all of this seems really interesting, therefore God, and we're not really getting anywhere. It smells of I like to believe in a God, and these are the things that make me seem like I am justified to believe in God, but really nothing has anything to do with the price of tea in China.
In the 5 ways are, and we're going to call that God. The prime mover, we're going to call God. And that God has absolutely nothing to do with the Bible, because now you've got to say, okay, the 5 ways prove God. All right, which God? Does it even prove a God? Is the prime mover the fact that the expansion happened because of some quantum event? We don't know, right? We don't know why the expansion happened, and that's a problem. And so now you're claiming that was God. Well, God of the Bible, which God? Because that argument doesn't even get you to the God.
Yeah,
it doesn't even get you to a God. It just gets you to a first mover that we're going to call God. Okay, we're now calling the first mover God. Which one? That's kind of and now you're making this leap of, well, energy can't be created or destroyed. Well, that's your prime mover right there. Energy ultimately is the prime mover. Okay, we'll call that God. But guess what? Now you got to take that God and prove to us it's the Christian God that you apparently believe in, or any other God concept you believe in. Because the best case for you right there is Spinoza's God. We've already had a conversation about that. That's the best you can hope for with the 5 ways. And I'm trying to remember is it Augustine or?
Let's go back to Brandon. Brandon, I don't want to leave it at that. I want to give you a chance. First, I guess my question as we wrap up is, do you in fact believe in a God that is defined commonly? Like, are you a Christian, for example?
Yeah, I'm Catholic. So
okay, so I think you would probably agree that everything you're saying here doesn't get you to any sort of specific God, right? All you're saying is these are reasons that you think it's okay to possibly believe that there might be some sort of God. Am I understanding you correctly?
Right, just as some form of concept that there could be a God. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, unless anybody has any more questions for Brandon, I really do appreciate your call, Brandon. I think it's not unusual sort of line of thinking. I would encourage you to go back and look at what is time, and hey, could all of this energy and matter have been in the singularity and it was neither created nor destroyed? It just sort of expanded, and see if you can come up with more reasons that you think justify a belief in a God other than it just sort of you believe you have permission to believe in a God now that you've thought about thermodynamics and stuff like that. So how are you guys doing? I'm checking in here. We're ways in. We have more calls to do. Everybody doing good? Shall we take some more calls? I have a few more announcements.
I had specific Catholic questions. If there's any Catholics out there that want to answer questions, I have specific Catholic questions. But
all right,
a whole other thing.
Excellent. I'm going to read a few more super chats. We have Ryan DeLongchamp, who is giving us $5. Thank you. Dog is absolutely real. We should all believe in dog. Fair enough. I agree. I have more evidence of dog than of God. Do either of you own dogs? I do not, but I love dogs. Oh,
no,
nice.
No, I don't like to farm.
Ryan for $4.99 said, any other atheist F1 fans? I believe he's talking about Formula One racing. I am not a huge fan. My father was an engineer, so of course he loves Formula One, where there's practically no passing and it's all about engineering. But I was just in Vegas this weekend. My friend, for a present, took me out to see the Eagles in the Sphere, and they had just had a big Formula One race there. So I got to see all the grandstands set up and how the streets were all messed up because of the race, and it was pretty big, the scale of it. Do you guys watch any sort of racing?
I don't. I read books. I'm so fucking lame, dude. I just sit around and just study all the time and make YouTube videos. I don't do things.
Well, books are kind of like NASCAR racing. You're always turning to the left, right? That works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm stretching here. So
no,
thank
great.
you. Jim keeps ducking in and out in his bunker there. So there he is. Jim, you're back. You're with us. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, Forrest. I cannot hear Graham.
Could you hear Jim there?
Damn it. No, I can't.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll have the producer.
I can hear Jim.
You can hear Jim?
Yeah, there was a bunch of issues before the show with different sound things. So we're back in it. It's going to be a fun show. Stay tuned. It's going to be weird.
Absolutely. We'll sort of use semaphore, Jim, and wave and stuff. I don't know if the audience can hear Jim or not, but I cannot. So I'm going to finish up some announcements. We'll take another call. We have,
there we go.
For the month of December, we are re-releasing our past limited edition t-shirts. Get your ACA merchandise at tiny.cc/merchaca. I got one just last week. It was pretty cool. Came pretty quickly too. So definitely a great way to support the team here. Finally, or next, I should say, if you like what we do, please consider supporting us on Patreon. We have a Patreon. Giving to our Patreon ensures our ability to continue to produce the content that you love. Visit tiny.cc/PatreonAXP. That's a link that should be available on our website as well. And finally, we do want to send a big thank you to the crew who put this show together every week. We have video operators, audio operators, note takers, call screeners, chat moderators. There are the usual suspects now, a boatload of criminals. I tell you, thank you all for what you do. The show would not in any way be possible without the crew. So thank you very much. All right, let's move on to, let's do one more test. Jim, can you say something? See if I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I cannot hear you
as well. Can you hear me?
I can hear Forrest.
Okay, I don't know.
We're back in business.
All right, I cannot hear him, but we can pass it off to him. Maybe
somebody
assume everything he's saying is really cool.
That's absolutely.
Nod real hard when he speaks.
Maybe people in the live chat can tell our producers in the live chat if they can hear Jim. And if so, then I will let Forrest and Jim do the rest of the talking, which may be preferable for a lot of people. Next up, we, I do want to take another one about this Christianity. Like, what sort of evidence do we have, right? And so we've got Chuck from Hawaii, who said, I don't think people understand what Christianity actually preaches. Now, I believe we have a history of hearing from Chuck before. Chuck, I'm going to have some very specific questions for you. Please do to stick to this. You say, I don't think people understand what Christianity actually preaches. I'll give you a minute here to explain, what does Christianity actually preach, and how do you know that that is what Christianity actually preaches? So give me your elevator elevator pitch. What does Christianity actually preach?
Okay. Christianity preaches the devil. Jesus is Satan. The whole religion is from Satan.
Right.
Okay. So I'm in it. Yeah, I'm gonna ask a question here, clarifying question. I've read the Bible once all the way through, but I do distinctly remember there being two different characters, Satan and Jesus, and they were two different things. So if the laws of logic apply, that a thing cannot both be and not be that thing at the same time, it seems like what you're saying couldn't be logically true. Could you explain what you mean?
Well, there is a real God, Jehovah, the God of the Bible, the real God, but Jesus is the devil. Christians worship the devil. This is what Christianity does and follows.
Okay,
And
so
they're
you
evil.
again are not answering my question here,
so
Chuck.
into this, though.
Yeah,
I'm into
yeah.
this.
I mean, this does sound like a season 2 twist, right? Of like
Yes.
the mask comes off, if that's what you mean. But I think you are so. I'm going to make a presumption here because we don't have a lot of time. I think you're so embedded in religious terminology that when you say Jesus is Satan and Jesus is the Bible, that you mean that Jesus is teaching bad things or tricking people. Do you literally mean that Jesus and the devil character from the Bible are the same entity? Or do you mean, no, Jesus is the real bad one? What do you mean there?
Well, that's what the devil is. The devil has come and he wants to be worshipped as
I'm asking
God.
what you mean, not what a devil is. I asked what you mean because I'm not understanding you. If I say Forrest is really Jim, that makes as much sense to me as what you're saying, because I'm presented with these two characters in this book and they are presented in all aspects as two separate entities. And now you're saying they're the same thing. So I don't know if you're speaking metaphorically and using Satan to mean he's a bad guy, or if you're speaking literally, which, by the way, is a problem with the entire Bible. So what do you mean? Do you mean that Forrest is Jim, or do you mean that Forrest is like Jim? Is Jesus Satan, or is Jesus like Satan?
Well, the God of the Bible is Jehovah, the real Jehovah.
Please answer
Jesus
the question.
is the devil.
Okay.
The devil.
Forrest,
That's
Jim,
who
do you have
he
any questions here for Chuck? Because he keeps repeating. I don't think he's understanding what I mean. When you say Jesus is the devil, I don't know if he's embedded so much in his way of speaking that he just means devil means bad, or if he literally means that, surprise, they're both the same guy.
I think he's saying that Jesus is literally the devil, and if we're assuming that is what he's saying, because Chuck, you're not clarifying for us, so we're gonna roll with that for just a second. Then why do you suppose the devil was the one saying, like, love your neighbor as yourself, and you know, whoever's without sin cast the first stone, and all the good things that Jesus was saying? Because I agree that the Bible teaches horrible things, and I love the idea of the God of the Bible actually being the devil of the real world. I think that's a phenomenal idea. But the Jesus of the Bible has a lot of reasons for me to say that he's not the devil. So it's like, let's dig into it. If Jesus and the devil are actually the exact same person, then why did the devil say so many pleasant things in the New Testament?
Because he wants to be serpent. He wants to be worshipped. He'll provide you with money if you go along with him. And if you worship him, that's what he wants. He wants to be worshipped.
He said he provides you with money. Jesus said that it's easier for a rich man to fit through the eye of a needle than to enter the kingdom of heaven. He doesn't like people with money.
Aha, but he's the devil, so he wants you to not go to heaven, so he'll give you money. You see, it all works together, Forrest.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Tell me, Chuck, if Jesus repeatedly said that rich people are the problem, and repeatedly advocated for the poor, and repeatedly said that greedy people are the biggest problem in the world and they're never going to get to heaven. Jesus said you should sell everything you own and give everything to charity and live in poverty yourself. What are you saying? He's going to give you money. What does that mean?
Because he wants you to worship him. That's what he wants. He wants you to worship him. And so he'll do for you.
I agree that's what he wants, but he isn't doing it the way you're saying he's doing it. So it sounds like you're conflating a couple of different characters, not only in their identities, but also in their actions and words.
Well, Jesus is the devil. It's very simple.
It's very simple. It's very simple, Forrest. It's very simple.
What do you take about that whole story of the devil tempting Jesus? Was it actually the devil tempting himself?
In the Christian religion of Jesus, the Christian God, Jesus, is the devil.
You just say he's
okay. All right.
So, I get it. Let me ask you a question, Chuck. What was the last thing that you ate today?
What did I eat? A bun.
Okay, that's great. You passed Forrest's test. You can't answer questions.
Nope, you didn't. You passed half of it. Second question, Chuck. If you hadn't eaten that bun, how would you feel right now?
Ooh, good question.
Still know that Jesus is the devil, That's an easy thing to
no,
understand.
you're right.
So he cannot answer questions. Chuck, it's been weird, man. Thanks so much for calling in to AXB. See you later.
You know, I quoted a movie to you before called Murder by Death. If you guys haven't seen it, highly recommend Murder by Death. It's a Neil Simon movie from the 70s, murder mystery satire. And in the end, there's a big reveals after reveal after reveal. And one of the characters says, I was in disguise, in disguise, in disguise. So I think he's on to something here. I was going to ask him, maybe you can call back next time. And instead of talking about Jesus being the devil, maybe you can explain to us what you actually believe, because you say you believe in Jehovah, you don't believe in Jesus. Are you Jewish? Like, do you just believe in the New Testament? And you think this Jesus guy is just a pretender to the throne? Because that would be fascinating. So I think we have Jim back. Let me see. Jim, can you say something? Jim can't hear me.
No, he still can't.
No.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
were checking Jim to see if you could hear us, but I don't
Jim
know
is
if you
here for
can.
moral support.
I could
Let's
hear
take
you,
another call.
Forrest.
What do you think, Forrest?
I could hear Graham in the one up, and when you go,
He's saying something. Can you hear him,
when
Forrest?
we go to the one up on you, I can't hear you.
Oh, cool. So yeah, I can hear him just fine. He said he can hear you only when you're the only one on screen, but when we're in all three of us, he can't hear you at all.
Interesting, fascinating.
It
So
makes
that's a
there
clue
seems
for
to
the
be
producers.
something going on.
Yeah, there's some producer that knows a thing, but like we're already at the end of the show, so like I don't know.
We are very close. I would like to squeak in one more call if you have time, guys.
Jim, are you cool with one more call?
I mean, it's up to you guys. I can sometimes hear the caller and sometimes not.
Right.
So like the last caller, I would have asked, how do you know there is a devil, since there isn't one in the Old Testament, and it's a Christian concept. But I didn't hear enough of what he's. Yeah,
it's because Jesus is the devil. You understand? That's all what it comes down to. That's why I asked him two questions, one of which required some sort of thought, because I think he could answer any random question, but like having a question that required some sort of cognition and like a hypothetical situation immediately defaulted back to Jesus is the devil. That's the one thought he had in his head.
It was
and so like that's
like as soon as you asked the second question, I was like, ooh, I don't know if he's going to get this one. And it reminded me something of a friend of mine who does training for companies for new hires. Like she's like, you need a training period for new hires because anybody can hold their shit together for a 15-minute interview.
Yes,
Jim,
absolutely.
Or Chuck, it was, held his shit together for your first question, but then collapsed under the weight of what would you feel like if you hadn't eaten? That was just too much.
So Jim said to me that he can sometimes hear the callers, but can't often. So if you want to do one more caller, I'm down to play with it a little bit. But
sure, let's give it a try.
He'll be able to hear us.
Let's give it a try. All right, we'll give it a try with Jim. Sometimes I can hear him when he's full screen. If there is a God, we're going to ask God right now in all sincerity to fix Jim's audio problems immediately right now. Jim, can you say something?
There's no God. That
no.
proved
Right.
it right
Okay.
there. Yeah, we prayed for Jim's mic to work and it didn't. Or your audio.
Right.
All right.
Exactly.
We have Steve from Nebraska. We're going to take Steve's call. Yes, we are. And we're going to do the same rules with Steve as we did with Jackie. We're going to stick to very specific questions, Steve. You say that you think there's evidence for Noah's flood, maybe something about a meteor, et cetera, et cetera. I would like you to let us know specifically, briefly, at a high level, what is the evidence that you suspect supports the idea of a worldwide flood? Go ahead.
Crater impact during a tsunami 1,000 years ago.
Okay, so is a crater impact somewhere? Where is the crater?
I have.
It's Burkle. You could anybody Google this online. Burkle crater, South Indian Ocean.
Okay, so a crater in the ocean that you say is dated to 1,000 years ago. You think?
5,000 years ago. Evidence of this is carbon dated sediment deposits.
Okay, hold on. I just want to take it one step at a time because this is scientific evidence. I want to make sure I understand each piece of it. I wasn't audibly hearing the first. Could you start your sentence by saying it was and then how long ago? Because I can't hear if you're saying 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 because the first syllable is dropping. How long ago was this?
5,000 years ago, the same time
Start your
frame.
sentence with,
biblical
he's saying
genealogy
5. Are you hearing 5? Okay.
I'm hearing
5,000 years ago, you believe. Okay. All right. So, Forrest, you're holding your head. You may have some evidence here. My question is, it sounds like a crater is an evidence of a crater. What is your thoughts there, Forrest?
My issue is that we're talking about a global flood for the Noah story, which it's just setting aside the fact that if we're talking about a tsunami, that something hit the ocean so greatly that it created a tsunami where all sorts of water was displaced and it covered all land on the planet to a point where all of the mountains were underwater by 20 feet, which is what the fucking Bible says. But like that doesn't make any sense. But setting that aside, saying that there was an impact of a meteor so great that it caused such a tsunami that it flooded the entire world with one tidal wave, even just for a second, that would be monumentally larger than the meteor that killed the dinosaurs.
Right.
We're talking about a meteor that's so much bigger than what caused the KT extinction. And you're saying it happened 5,000 years ago, which means we would still be experiencing the direct effects of that, still be experiencing mass extinctions from that. No fucking way humans survived that, especially if we're talking about it being a localized event, which only affected this particular area of wherever in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, wherever Noah's Ark was supposed to be found or whatever. Like, no, absolutely. It makes zero sense when you think about it for 2 fucking seconds. That doesn't work, Steve.
I also will add
a boat wouldn't survive that tidal wave either.
Ahead,
so there's no way the Noah story makes any sense.
Yeah, it's just the Noah's, every part of the Noah story is nonsense. And now you have the one most fundamental claim is that the entire earth was underwater for a minute, and you're going to blame a meteor on it 5,000 years ago. When I promise you, bro, 5,000 years ago, we had ice caps. We still had a lot of glaciers going on. So that meteor would have had to have melted all of the ice on the planet and also displaced all of the water that in order to cover all the land masses and somehow not cause a mass extinction event beyond the Permian. Like that would have been worse than the Permian mass extinction. That would have been unbelievable. And like you're sitting here saying that, yeah, we found a crater. Neat. Is everything alive? Cool. Yeah. Then no flood didn't happen. The fact that it's just fucking goddamn it, dude. The whole flood, the whole world being underwater would have meant that all of the salt water and all of the fresh water would have been mixed together, which means all of the freshwater things would have died. And they didn't. And also all of the coral reefs that need to be under shallow water also would have died. And they fucking didn't. And also all of the plants and also the desert ecosystems that wouldn't have been able to survive that. 0%. Furthermore, if you're trying to say that like the flood implies the Noah story, that's fucking weird, bro. Because if you're saying that there's one family of 8 people from which all of us are descended just 5,000 years ago, we are a laughably inbred species, but we're not that bad. And what happened to all of the animals that you don't see? What happened to the microbes? What happened to the parasites? Who did Noah have unprotected sex with in order to bring trichomoniasis onto the fucking ark to make sure that it's around with us today? Just 0%. No points. No stars. Bad argument as always, Steve.
I will add on top of that. That was a great. I mean, we're gonna. I'm sure we're gonna clip that because that's amazing. But even if you could explain all that away, don't you see the inconsistency of the answer to where did the water go? If there was enough water to cover the entire planet, and we say, where did we go? The typical answer from most Christians is God miracled away the water because God can do anything. And then I ask, then what use the asteroid or the meteor? If he can miracle away the water, he can miracle onto the water. And it was described as rain, et cetera, and all that sort of stuff. I always find it fascinating when people believe these stories, but they need this physical element that they don't just say, well, just God miracled it. It sort of betrays their need for some piece of evidence that they don't have. I'm going to try throwing to Jim and see if he has any comments. I know he's been listening to Forrest. So Jim, what do you think? Maybe you can tell him to take it away, Forrest.
Yeah, Jim, it's on you.
Okay, so I'm going to kick this dead horse because I know, Forrest, you just killed the argument dead, but I'm going to kick it a couple of times. So first of all, let's talk about wave height and maximum wave height. Maximum wave height in deep water is limited to the energy in the wave. Once you come closer onto shore, it's limited by the depth. And so once you get a wave of any height into shallow water, you're limiting the height that can be. And so at some point, you have to, the wave has to come onto land. And at that point, it's got to fall apart. There's nothing to sustain it at that point. So there's not enough water in the ocean to sustain a wave height to cross Africa or to cross the Americas or to cross any major landmass. There's just not enough energy there to do that, nor is there enough water to do that. So to cover the entire world as the story is told doesn't make any sense just with the concept of a wave. And we're going to ignore the fact that this wave, this tsunami would have just sunk anything floating, any boat floating. And we know this because modern boats don't handle, we call them rogue waves, don't handle rogue waves very well. These steel ships get their hulls stove in. You can look rogue wave and ships online and go look at that. They don't survive now. Part of the problem, part of what happens is if the bow comes up and the wave moves under, eventually you may have too much weight and the spine of the ship may break. And so you'll get that, but you also get enough water pressure coming in to destroy, just punch holes in the sides of these ships too. So there is just simply no way from the physics of waves for the flood, for this explanation for the flood to happen. It's just simply not possible.
All right. So
there's also
as
not
the
a
flood is
major
written.
break. There's also not a major break in the fossil record 5,000 years ago where we suddenly see like this distinction where every single animal is only reduced down to 2. And then there's like this huge issue where we have to get them back to where they're going to different parts of the world. And then they have to reproduce and repopulate that area of the world. There's more genetic diversity in chimpanzees than there is in humans. How does that make any sense if chimpanzees were reduced to 2 individuals and humans were reduced to 8 individuals? Steve, as always, please stop reading random shit on the internet and then calling these shows and using us the way you should be using Google. Just check and think about the things you're asking first before you waste our time with them.
Yeah, Steve, give you the last word. What are your thoughts on all the criticisms you just heard of the Noah's flood story and the meteor observation?
The Hebrew word Eretz does not, earth, can mean a global, large subcontinental area. So I've never claimed, the Bible never claims Noah's flood to be global. So you guys just totally missed the point. Totally
yeah, we did. You're right. I'm so sorry.
Does.
We're going to go back and read it again.
Hebrew Eretz, earth, doesn't mean. So you missed the entire point, but you're the end of the show. I'll let y'all go. Y'all have a happy New Year.
You too, Steve.
So even if we assume you're correct and it doesn't include the entire Earth, it still doesn't change the wave mechanics.
Yeah,
and if it didn't cover the entire Earth, why do you need a boat?
All you do is you sort of raise the perspective of every event depicted in the Bible is in a tiny little area of the Middle East. Like I agree with Steve. The authors of the Bible were unaware of the existence of the rest of the earth. So that is the end of our show.
Just to be fucking goddamn it, dude. Just to be clear. God said, the end of all flesh is come before me. The earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them in the earth. I will destroy man, whom I created from the face of the earth, both man, the beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for I repent that I have made them. I will bring floodwaters upon the earth. I will destroy all flesh wherein there is the breath of life, in form under heaven. Everything that is in the earth shall die. No, Steve, it doesn't say a small regional flood. It says the whole fucking earth. Everything on earth shall die that breathes. Every man, every woman, every child, every animal, every bird, every creeping thing on the whole planet. Even if you reduce it just down to humans, there were humans on the other side of the planet when Palestine was supposedly flooded by the monster you worship. Read your fucking book and use Google before you call us. God damn, dude, every single fucking time you call it, some shit that you read online and you've never fucking thought about for more than 2 seconds. Google it and think about it, then call, or preferably don't.
You know, Forrest, if there's one criticism I've heard of you from our listeners is that you beat around the bush too much. So you really need to get to the point here. No, I can't. I think we just ended on that. That is 100% accurate. I know his response will be, yes, but everywhere it says earth, it means only the places that the authors of the Bible were aware of. I don't see how that makes his argument any better. So I'm going to toss to Jim. I don't know if he can hear me. Maybe Forrest can toss to him and see if he's got any final comments for our listeners before we head out.
Jim, any final comments from you?
No, I just, more really, really bad arguments from people who haven't thought it all the way through. Unfortunately, I was hoping, as I do every episode I'm on, I'm hoping for evidence, and it just nobody seems to have good evidence, and they just repeat arguments over and over again that we've heard ad nauseum. So not only should you Google science facts before you come on the show, I think you should also Google your argument and see if it's been argued before, especially on this show, and then go listen so that we don't have to repeat ourselves. And it gets frustrating, and sometimes you hear that in our voices and in our mannerisms where it's like, oh God, I just got through doing this. Because, we do this not just here on this show, but I'm on Facebook quite a bit. I'm on other shows. Forrest, I know you've got your own show. You do other shows. Same with Graham. And sometimes we've heard that same argument for the 50th time that day, and we're just done. And we're human, and that happens. And, it will happen.
Yeah,
so.
No, that is really what it boils down to, is that and you can see a little bit of anger that I have for Steve specifically, because I have talked to Steve 1,000 times, and it is always that. As I read this one article, I read this one book, I saw this one YouTube video, I saw this one paper, and that's how I know we're in a simulation, and that's how I know that we're gonna that octopuses come from outer space, and that's why I know this other random thing. And the second that he's pressed on any of it, it's very clear he hasn't thought about any of it. And to what Jim was saying, I host lots of these shows. I'm literally doing another show at 7:00 today, and I guarantee I'm going to hear a lot of the same arguments. And I try to be pleasant with it as much as I can. But when you have somebody who is just very clearly interested in smelling their own farts and wasting everybody else's time, I really don't have any patience for it. These shows help so many people who are struggling with their faith, who are trying to free themselves from the chains of religion, who are trapped in theistic and dogmatic worldviews. And these shows help them learn. And these shows help them answer questions for themselves that they are afraid to ask for themselves. This is a charity that we are doing what we think is really good work. Whether or not you agree with us, this is what we think is really, really important shit. And people like Steve just really, really, really want to get their voice on the air so they can talk about whatever dumb shit they thought of in the shower today. And I really just don't have patience for it. I don't.
Yeah,
especially in 2024 where Google's a thing.
In the year of our dark Lord, 2024.
Google Scholar is a thing where we can read papers, original sources for almost everything. Science. You can go online and get the original sources for the Bible, and if you can read the Greek or the other languages and the original sources, you can go read those sources and do original source work in 2024. And if you're not doing that and you're going to come on the show, you're not coming with your A game. And if you catch us on a bad day, it may be a bad day for you as well, unfortunately.
Well, thank you, everybody. I really do appreciate it. I can echo your sentiments. We do have one more super chat to read before we go. Excuse me. Afristorian donated $5 and has a question for Forrest. I don't know if you can see the show chat or the document, Forrest, because there's a bunch of words here. Forrest, choose your mega mammal, and then he lists a bunch of them. Do you have a mega mammal you would choose? He doesn't give for what. I don't know if this is like a Pokemon battle or a.
So these are megafauna from a little while ago. I'm all about proboscideans, yo. Like proboscideans are elephants and the like.
That is Forrest's next diss track that he's dropping is going to be "I'm all about proboscideans, yo," and it's just he's trashing all the other mega mammals.
No, I mean no shade to pantodons. I'm saying that okay, so proboscideans are fucking wild. You have this ridiculously huge amount of diversity in these giant tusked weirdos stomping around Laurasia, and I love them. I think they're really neat. And especially when I was a kid. So I talked about Lovecraft a minute ago, right? And I was talking about how I'm so inspired by the scary things. When I was a kid at the Tulsa Zoo, they had this display in the elephant area. There's like the elephant building. They had this display of a woolly mammoth and like all of these early humans like hunting it with spears and atlatls and stuff. And you could push a button and all the lights in the whole building would go down and it'd flash thunder and lightning and make these horrible elephant sounds. And it scared the piss out of me when I was a kid. I was terrified of it. And for some reason, I don't know why, when I'm really, really scared of things, I am fascinated by them and I want to learn more about them. And so I get excited about that stuff. There's a reason why I love scary stories and scary movies and scary everything. I read these horror things. And I used to watch internet, like those screamer pranks over as they scared the piss out of me. So I'd watch them over and over and over and take detailed notes of what jumped out and when it jumped out and what sound it made and why. And like all these. And so with proboscideans, I immediately, when I see an elephant, I feel this like mixture of like fear and joy. And I just want to know more about them. It's just this childhood thing for me. I love them.
That's amazing.
I'm very weird and elephants are very cool is all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that boils down like I think most
almost
people
as cool
find
as octopus and squids and the like.
Speaking
but
of
I don't know if that comes under the megafauna or where they would come under the megafauna stuff, but.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Something about a species that'll punch a fish just because it's funny or they're bored.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for another great episode of Atheist Experience. I will say it. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Whatever you celebrate, please enjoy yourself. Drink responsibly, unlike some people I know around here, and have a great time. I'm not naming names, Forrest. I'm not naming names.
All right.
And I hope everybody has a good day.
In a soda can. Call me out on it.
That's right. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.